Okay, yes, we're live. Good evening. Hi, everybody. I'm Carissa April. I'm the Marine Biological Laboratories point person for events and community programming. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the 5th Falmouth Forum of the season. There's 3 more to look forward to after tonight. Here in the Clapp Auditorium in Woods Hole, where it's about 10 degrees outside, the wind chill or real feel, they're calling about -8. So we have a very nice gathering of brave souls who bundled up to come out tonight, and I appreciate that. And then we have an even larger group, over 100, I think we're somewhere around 130, maybe a little more, who have registered to join us remotely from the comfort of their warm and cozy homes. But it's nice and cozy in here, so thanks for coming. I have 2 housekeeping items. Please turn off your cell phones, a standard one, and then just a notice that we are live streaming tonight and also recording this. So it'll be simulcast and also recorded. And finally, my special thanks to the Falmouth Forum Committee, who so professionally volunteer their time to really curate each forum season and balance culture and art and science, and kind of bring all that to the community throughout the years. And that's really special, and that's a lot of service that they bring to us. If you have ideas for Falmouth Forum speakers, presenters, please share them with committee members who are here tonight. They'd love to hear your ideas. And with that, I'll welcome Day Mount, a committee member and also a former U.S. ambassador to Iceland, to introduce tonight's very special forum guest.
Thank you, Carissa. Welcome to everyone here and online. Just want to mention that the Falmouth Forum is free, but we do have costs, and we are building an endowment. So anytime that anyone would like to contribute to that, it's very much appreciated. We'd like to be able to do even better than what we're doing today. Elizabeth Dorris, A Musical Life. Falmouth Forum has been seeking out special people who help to make Cape Cod the vibrant, interesting, and I'd say caring community that we are. For example, we had Falmouth High School art teacher Jane Baker here to speak to us. Another example, we had a landscape artist who focuses heavily on Cape Cod, Joe McGurl, here to speak to us. And certain people in those communities knew who they were, but the rest of us didn't. So we wanted to share what they bring to our community. And tonight we're going to look at the musical arts that enrich us through the eyes of Elizabeth Betsy Dorris. When Betsy retired from the Cape Symphony, she had given 45 years to helping move the symphony from a mostly volunteer organization in the 60s to one of the largest professional symphonies in Massachusetts. She has performed numerous times over the bridge, and she has taught all through her career. She was most recently a band director of the Cape Lighthouse Charter School, and she's the winds instructor for the Cape Youth Symphony Orchestra. My wife Kathy and I recently attended the winter concert of the Cape Youth Symphony Orchestra, and we were just inspired. Isn't it wonderful that there are still young people who aren't just playing Dungeons and Dragons, but are learning violin, trombone, flute, and yes, oboe. It was such fun to see Betsy with her group of young performers playing this snappy, fun piece together. And you can just imagine what it was like for those young people. They weren't just stuck up there alone in front of all their parents and relatives and everyone else. They had a professional playing with them, someone who could show them how to do it, someone that just gave them that extra oomph. The Cape Youth Symphony is interesting and exciting, and so is the regular symphony and the other opportunities for music here. To tell us about it, please welcome Betsy Dorris.
Thanks. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out on this frigid evening. It's really the coldest I can remember being on the Cape for 47 years. I'd like to thank the Falmouth Forum for inviting me, first of all, and a special thanks to you, Jay, who convinced me that I had a story to tell. Also, I'd like to thank my friend Avery Revere, who insisted on and created this wonderful PowerPoint. My friend Marion Lay, who, in her unerring compilation that made sense of all my notes, and Dr. Mark Lawler for his gift of music and comic relief. And I have to say again, thanks so much for coming out tonight. And all of you that are home, I hope you're cozy. I'm going to start with the early years. I remember the first time someone asked me when I decided to become a musician. I was kind of taken aback because I'd never really thought of being anything else. I grew up in a singing household in Westfield, Mass. 3- and 4-part harmonies were a staple. I sang my first solo in kindergarten, started piano lessons in 3rd grade, then on to the clarinet and the junior choir in 5th grade. In the 7th grade, at the suggestion of my band director, my cousin brought over an oboe for me to try, and that was that. I fell in love with the beautiful sound and the comment that all oboe players go crazy in the end sealed the deal. That should give you some insight into my mindset at age 13 anyway. Well, this set the tack and opened up so many doors for me in those early years. I was soon a member of the Springfield Young People's Symphony. I went to all state music festivals for 4 years, music camp in the summer, and at age 16, I got my first musician union card so that I could play in the local American Legion band. Also, because it was the early 60s and the folk music scene was on fire, I bought a guitar, learned a bunch of songs, and was soon performing solo and duo acts. I went to college at Boston University School of Fine Arts and studied with Ralph Gomberg, the principal oboist of the Boston Symphony in those days. What a wonderful and immersive time of life. Music, 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 with a little pot thrown in the mix. It was the 60s after all. I got to perform tons of orchestral and chamber music and emerged with the Bachelor of Fine Arts in oboe performance. In 1969, I spent an amazing and idyllic summer at Tanglewood, the summer home of the Boston Symphony, getting a chance to listen to the BSO rehearsals, running into Leonard Bernstein at parties, and listening to Janis Joplin belt out Me and Bobby McGee in the Shed. What a summer, it was great. After college, I spent a year as a Yamaha music teacher, which is basically a piano class for 4 to 8-year-old kids. And also, I appeared a couple of times on a Saturday morning kids show called Jabberwocky as Miss Music. On to the Cape Symphony. My first experience with the Cape Cod Symphony was in 1969. I was still in college, and 4 of us, with 2 bassoons, 1 cello, 1 oboe, packed into a VW Bug and came to play a concert at the Matakees Middle School. We were what they called ringers. Osborne McConaughey, was the conductor then, and I can't remember what the program was or how much we were paid. When I moved to the Cape in 1976 with a couple of kids in tow, I decided to audition for the Symphony. When I walked into the audition, much to my surprise, it was Jerome Cohen, or as I knew, Jerry Cohen, an old Boston acquaintance, and he was the conductor. I got in. I believe I was the first paid player at $25 a concert. Raising a family during these early years was tricky, to say the least. Finding time to practice, racing to rehearsals just in time to sound the A, and my husband arriving at intermission with a baby ready to nurse. After Jerry, I was on the search committee for a new conductor. The charismatic Royston Nash was hired in 1980 and led the orchestra for 27 years. Much to the dismay of several board members, I was a squeaky wheel, always advocating for higher wages and good playing conditions, which over time resulted in attracting a higher level of player, and soon the orchestra was sounding more like a professional group. During Royston's tenure, the orchestra made the move from Mattakees to the Barnstable Performing Arts Center, its current home. In 2007, Jung Ho Pak came on board and really brought a new vitality to the orchestra with his enthusiasm and creative programming. Now, over the years, we've had many guest soloists and conductors, beginning with Beverly Sills, and on to Yo-Yo Ma, Joshua Bell, and many more, too many to name. But one guest stands out to me, Mitch Miller. In the early 60s, Mitch had a television show called Sing Along with Mitch. Anybody remember Follow the Bouncing Ball? Well, as well as a conductor, Mitch was an oboist, and he was invited to come and play a solo as well as conduct the orchestra. About 2 days before the first rehearsal, I got a call informing me that he wasn't going to play after all, and could I fill in for him. I remember I said yes, of course. And then I remember I was backstage warming up, and he came over to me and asked me how my reed was. Before I knew it, he'd taken the reed out of my hand, stuck it into my oboe, and played a few notes on it, declaring the reed good. Well, as many of you may not know, Mitch was an inveterate cigar smoker. And when I went to play the concert, the reed tasted of his secondhand stinky cigar for the entire concert. True story. I was always advocating for the musicians and my dream of having the Cape Symphony Orchestra become a professional orchestra. After several attempts, we finally were successful in forming an elected players committee, allowing the musicians a voice in the organization. I served as the player rep to the board several times during my tenure. And finally, in 2018, the orchestra became unionized, and I realized a lifelong dream. Yeah, it's really a good thing. When I thought about the looming possibility of retirement, I decided to recruit some of my fellow musicians, like on either side of me. And I asked them to take a vow that when the time came, they would lean over and tell me that they thought it was time to start practicing the accordion a little more. And my other bellwether for retirement is how long and how difficult it was for me to get off my chair to take a bow. That is so true. Well, with these in place, a pandemic and some reluctant fingers sealed the deal, and I decided to retire as the principal oboist after 45 years. Thank you. Little reed maintenance here. And I'm going to warm this up while I talk to you. On to the oboe. The oboe has been rated the hardest instrument to play. And I'm going to read you a little blurb that I got on the internet. So it says, before you even start playing it, you should know that an oboe requires more maintenance than most instruments. That means more time and money spent without playing. The first thing that can cause problems is the reed, which is what creates a gorgeous tone. Unlike other reed instruments, there is even less room for fault with the oboe. The reed has to be in perfect condition and perfectly positioned at all times. For a long time after you take up the oboe, you will still sound terrible. There's no escaping that. Unless you are of rare, prodigious talent, you need to practice a lot to learn. The oboe's design has changed a lot over time. Originally, it could be only played in certain keys, but now it can be played in any key. But one side effect of the modern oboe is that it's far heavier than it looks. There are also still some issues with tuning, where not every scale will be perfectly in tune. The player has to compensate for this through embouchure and clever fingers. The oboe seems like it was invented as a cruel joke at times. It's possibly the hardest instrument to learn, but learn it well and you'll be in high demand. The oboe. As you see, it has a conical bore. This oboe is made of grenadilla wood, and some are made of rosewood, but mostly, I think you'll find mostly grenadilla. When I say it's a conical bore, you can see diameter of where I put the reed in versus the bell. So it's like a big, long, black ice cream cone. Reeds are a constant issue. Speaking of which, I gotta just put this guy in water. Learning to make a reed is a must. It's a significant outlay of money for tools and equipment, and you're always a slave to the temperature and humidity of the hall. So you need to be able to make minute adjustments, sometimes at the last minute. I know, for example, tonight, what's the humidity? What's the temperature? These reeds, I'm hoping that they're going to work tonight, but anyway. They're made of a bamboo-like cane called a rundodonax, which is known for its resilience and ability to vibrate. The piece of cane is machined and shaped and then tied on a metal tube. It is then carved to achieve the desired tone. Believe me, it's not as easy as it sounds. There's an aperture that's created by the two blades of the reed. So if you were to look at these are the two blades, there's a little aperture that's created. And you have to blow air at a fairly high PSI to get the blades to vibrate. That's where you get something called back pressure. Back pressure is when I would do the dog and pony show for the little kids, and they would see my face get red, and I would say, "This is what it feels like to play the oboe because you're just funny." It gives you an idea of what and you're supposed to make it look effortless, but you're really going, "I'm dying." Anyway. But if you have done your due diligence, it's all systems go. Now, some of you have, I dare say most of you have gone to a symphony orchestra concert, and the first thing you hear is the oboe playing an A. Now, as the principal oboe tunes the orchestra, so a lot of the work is created in the practice room and on your reed table, trying to create a reed that will tune the orchestra correctly. And oftentimes when you get to the hall and you look in your reed case and you go, "Reed of the day, who will it be?" You know, because you don't, I have 3 candidates here. So we'll see who reed of the day is. Another way that we can tell how a reed will play or react is called peeping and crowing. Very scientific, but it's basically peeping crowing. So that informs me the response of the reed and how much of the blades are vibrating. So with that in time, I'm going to evaluate reed of the day today in front of you all. So this was my number one at 4 o'clock today. We'll see how it is. But I've been soaking them. You can over soak them and under soak them. So it's always this kind of really, you're always agité. Oh, I like that. Still may be my number one. Peep and crow. Not today. This guy just went from number 3 to number 1 today. Yeah. I brought along a store-bought reed. Now, this is what you could go if you said, I want to play the oboe, and go to the store, and you get this store-bought reed. Have a listen. You see why people quit? So I am going to just swab this out. Another thing that I'm constantly nervous about when I'm playing is cold air, which I feel, blowing on the instrument. And I'm blowing warm air into the horn, and it causes condensation, and it can come out of key. So you might be playing, something fabulous and everything is great, and all of a sudden you get water in your key and it's gurgle, gurgle, and you're calling for the plumber. I'd like to introduce my friend Mark Lawler on keyboard. So I want to tune first, Mark. Can I get it? I'm having second thoughts. Hold on. No. All right. So when Day called me to do this, he remarked how he was a big fan of a rendition of Gabriel's oboe that I've played. This is a really, really beautiful tune. It's from the movie The Mission back in the 80s. Jeremy Irons played a priest, and he played the oboe. And it's by Ennio Morricone, that fabulous screen music writer is fabulous. I'm going to just toot a little bit more. Hold on a minute, Mark. It's a beauty, isn't it? I had to catch my breath here. Did my face get red? Yeah, I know. I said to someone else, someone the other day, I said, if I'd ever looked in the mirror and saw what I looked like when I played the oboe, I never would have played the oboe. I was 13 after all, so. All right, now on to gigging. So if you're not in a major orchestra, and I think there are about 12 or 16 of them that have a 52-week season, you've got to supplement your income. And that's done by gigging, which means just taking as anything that comes your way, almost. You have to travel far and wide. Back before GPS in the dark ages, I remember with the dome light of a car and written directions to go somewhere to play some church gig in East Timbuktu. I mean, it was so crazy in those days. But back in the 80s, I played, some of the gigs I did was with the Opera Company of Boston, with Sarah Caldwell, Boston Classical. I played with the Mexico City Philharmonic, played in Guadalajara. And I had such a memorable tour. I went on a tour of Spain in, I think it was 2002. And it was called Orchestra Sinfonica de Massachusetts. Which is, it was basically the Springfield Symphony had gotten its players who were come from Boston and New York and that, and I got to be on that tour, and we were the first American orchestra to travel to Europe after 9/11, and we had an all-American program, Gershwin, Bernstein. It was such a memorable time. Then there's the stuff that I've done locally. The beloved Simon Sinfonietta, Chatham Chorale, Falmouth Chorale, Woods Hole Cantata, and countless church gigs and weddings. Have oboe will travel. I'm just checking on my read because it makes me nervous. Another way to supplement income is teaching. And I've maintained a private studio in my home for many years. Yes, you see that on either side of that chair? That's reed thread from all the reeds that I've made over the past like 30 years. It's just like this tassel. And then you can see it on either side of the table. It's very scientific. Anyway, I've maintained this private studio in my home for years. I have to say, teaching music has been a real passion for me. As a private teacher, you get to discover each student's individual pathway of learning, whether it's oral, visual, tactile, whatever. It's a real treasure hunt. And when that light bulb goes on, eureka, it's so incredibly rewarding. In 1998, I was lucky enough to be hired as band director at the Cape Cod Lighthouse Charter School. And that's when my love affair with teaching middle school began. The knucklehead years, I call them. I'd always say to the kids that they had the pitch Nazi for a director because as an oboist, I tuned the orchestra. And I dare say, you'd have to look far and wide to find a middle school band that played more in tune than my band. When I was growing up, I felt like a real misfit, and I found my band a safe haven. Because of this, I tried to create an atmosphere that engendered loyalty and a sense of belonging. Once you walked through my door, you were automatically part of the group and had a place to belong. I retired this year from charter school gig and miss it, but now having this wonderful opportunity to be the wind coordinator for the Cape Symphony Youth Orchestra really helps fill that gap that I need. Now I'm going to talk about friendships. I have to say that the greatest gift that music gave and still gives me is the countless lifelong friendships that I've made. The music world is a really small world. I remember playing a concert in a small town in Mexico, and one of the violinists came up to me and asked me if I was Betsy from Cape Cod. I mean, go figure. And in the 1990s, I reunited with two high school pals who played banjo and auto harp. I filled in on oboe, English horn, guitar, and accordion, and we got together, and soon the Pioneer Valley Girls were born. We played a combination of old time and gospel, sung with wonderful three-part harmony. We had a great time traveling and performing and recording together. Also, around the same time, I met a woman named Carolyn McDade, who's a feminist and writer of women's music. She really changed my whole approach to learning how to improvise. We enjoyed a 10-year collaboration, and those recordings remain near and dear to my heart. Another real gift has been being a mentor and a friend to up-and-coming musicians, young enough to be my children, yet old enough to be my colleagues. The further along I get, the most satisfying thing of all is making music with friends. And now this is the amen, as I call this. The truth is that I love nothing better than making music. I really feel like the luckiest person in the world because I get to do what I love for a career. In my mid-40s, something changed for me, and the music became the boss. And I became a conduit. And I feel this really opened up my whole approach to playing the oboe. Music just moved through me. I feel once you learn one instrument, you can pretty much play any instrument. I know some of you don't believe me, but I think you might be surprised. And this, of course, now leads to the matter of the accordion. When I was 48, I decided that I needed to play an instrument that I could laugh and play at the same time. I was so jealous of the string players that we would play, and they would be laughing, and I'd be, you know, it just never worked. And that was not going to be the oboe. So I went to an accordion shop in New Bedford and bought a little 12-button accordion. And to this day, the accordion remains what I call my menopausal gesture. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Pan Math Challenge. It's a fundraising bike-a-thon started in 1980. It's a 2-day, 192-mile bike ride across Massachusetts, benefiting the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. The second leg happens to go right by my house in West Barnstable. After a few years of hearing them whiz by my window at 5:30 in the morning, I decided to strap on the accordion, run down the driveway, and serenade the riders. A few years ago, my dear friend Marion, who's here tonight, revealed that she owned a lobster costume. And the rest is history. Just ask anyone who rides the second day about the lobster and the accordion. I'm lucky enough to have a gift to bring joy through music, even if it means getting up at the crack of dawn in a silly costume and go out and cheer on the riders with a friend. I asked my kids if any of them wanted to contribute anything in regards to what life is like having a mom who played the oboe. And this is what my daughter Rachel wrote. One of my favorite memories is when you would host chamber music rehearsals in your house. Oboe, clarinet, flute, French horn. I can specifically remember playing outside in the summer or coming home from the pond and hearing the live music out the windows. It was so beautiful and lovely. Although it was a common experience for us to hear beautiful live classical music at home, I knew it was special, and I always loved that. I also loved and still love hearing you practice, sometimes yelling shit and trying the tough part over and over until you got it. It was fun when a bunch of musicians from the symphony would gather after the performance at home. Lots of snacks, drinks, and hilarious characters. Lots of joy at home on those nights. I think you think it was weirder for the kids than it actually was. It was great. It definitely taught me not to judge a book by its cover. Many of the classical musicians that hung around the house were the most normal looking, but the funniest, creative, and eccentric people I ever met. I suppose it takes a special breed of person to commit your career to being a classical musician. I have a lot of respect for artists like you that have this dedication to their craft and ultimately become a conduit of sound to be shared. Being a lifelong musician, professional oboist, is not a common career choice, and I think that is awesome. I know. So now I'd like to end with a gem of a piece composed by Jay Unger from the Ken Burns Civil War series called The Ashokan Farewell. But I've got to get some water out of my key. I don't know if you heard it in the Gabriel's oboe, but it was there, present. So here's a little insight into how do you get the water out of the key? Take a cigarette paper. What do we have? Yep. So let's hope that it's gone. Give me a minute to swab out one more time. Mark, are you feeling like you're ready to do this? You have to do that all the time while you're playing, and you have to make it look like no one can see you doing it. Let me see what this reed has been doing. I need an A. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bow with me. Thank you. Oh. Sure. If there are any questions, I don't know what I left unanswered.
Betsy,
Yes.
instrument that Jeremy Irons was holding was so different than what you're playing.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me, Betsy?
I can.
The instrument that was in the earlier photograph that Jeremy Irons was playing looks like a completely different instrument than what you're playing. Is it just
Yeah,
the
it's a-
evolution or
A primitive instrument. There are no keys on it. It's
Yeah,
just a
d-
double reed. But
the braces?
yeah, I know, right?
Thanks. That one here.
My children are all visual artists. I have a glass blower, I have a textile designer, and I have a sculpture woodworker fabricator. So
I wasn't thinking about the Jeremy Irons oboe, but since it was brought up, is that a Baroque oboe he was playing?
I think it's even a cruder version than a Baroque.
Okay.
I mean, the Baroque oboes just usually have one key
Yeah.
and pinky. So
My question was, I saw you warming your oboe under your arm,
yes.
as I do with my instrument, and I wondered what happens if it's cold, if it doesn't get warmed up enough.
Well, first of all, a cold oboe is a flat oboe. I mean, the pitch goes up when you warm it up, so you always want to keep it try to maintain the temperature. And also, again, with the fact that when you're blowing the hot air and the condensation happens, it will come out the first key that's open, so you just try to keep it under my, I mean, it's chilly up here, so it was getting cold, but yeah.
Betsy, bravo. This was great. What's the major piece of advice you give to those you mentor? Or is there one or?
Pretty much it's got to be fun, or it's not worth doing. Simple, but to the point.
Hi, Betsy. So
Hi.
my question is, what's considered the Mount Everest for an oboist? What is the one piece that an oboist,
Whoa.
Craves
you
to
mean
master.
As far as a piece of music?
classical piece of music, yeah,
And could you play it, please?
right now?
You know, I said today, all right, I'm not going to do anything really complicated. Remember, I said reluctant fingers, and they're still here. The Strauss oboe concerto is pretty difficult. I mean, there's so many newer pieces that are out. You know, I'm fairly long in the teeth, but you know, I'm not playing that, Cynthia. So.
My wife and I just got back from New York City, and there's an old joke, and I wonder if you know it. How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Practice. It's one of my favorite jokes. I actually. Somebody.
The oboe is an instrument that's alone, right up there in the middle of everything. You have to play it. It stands out enormously. How do you ever keep your confidence up?
Oh, that's the biggest struggle. Yeah, practice. Yeah, practice is a big part of it. But you just have to, as I said, you know, when I realized that it wasn't about me, it was about the music, then something really relaxed in me. because I didn't say wasn't about me, it was about the music, so that I felt like, you know, I was just this kind of vehicle for it to move through. And I think that really changed my playing when I started not getting uptight about it, because I realized it's so much more than I am. Hey, thanks, everybody. Thank you.